On this day I agreed to go out with a fellow biker for a ride with the possibility of meeting up with a couple of others later on. When I came downstairs I couldn't find my bike keys, so I got into a bit of a panic. I'm running outside and my husband was trying to get my bike out of the garage, but he couldn't get the steering lock off the bike, which was quite funny. Once I managed to get the bike out and get it out onto the road ready to start, I was having difficulty getting the engine to start, so I was cursing him thinking that he broke my bike, when actually all he'd done is accidentally pressed the kill switch on the bike. I think that's the first thing I should really check. But once I actually got the kill switch back on and got the engine running and set off, and it was a beautiful day. Now my husband isn't a biker, he won't get on a bike, which is quite amusing since he decided to fall in love with a biker and marry a biker. But that does come in handy because he does treat me to a lot of bike gear and sends me lovely bike pictures. But he won't join me on a ride. So I suppose it's kind of good because it's a time where I get to have my own space and I get to deal with my own mental health issues and my anxiety and deal with all of the hell that life has thrown at me. I might tell you more maybe in the next vlog about my health and about what gave me the ostomy that you learnt about in one of the earlier vlogs. So here I'm on my way to meet up with Kevin, meeting him at the Silverlink. We're just going round now, so you'll be seeing him in a minute. He's got a much bigger bike. I've kind of been riding longer than him, but he passed his test, so he's actually took his test, passed his test, and has got a beautiful big bike. Yet even though I've been riding for years, I'm still stuck on little Ronnie and still have to have L plates. I'm really hoping that I can get rid of them soon. It is starting to become a joke. Well, it was a joke, but now it's really starting to get to me. I can't stand seeing them anymore. They've got to come off. I've got to pass my test. I've got to build up the courage to actually take my test once lockdown allows. So Kevin and his bike are just in view now. We're just about to stop and meet up to discuss where we are going. Isn't that a beautiful bike? So just taking a sneaky look in the mirror to check that my camera is on, and then getting ready for us both to set off. I'm going to be leading because Kevin doesn't know the area, and if he was in front he'd probably zoom off ahead and leave me since I'm the slower bike at this point. I think the plan was to head along down to the quayside in Newcastle, across the swing bridge, over through into Gateshead, then across the Tyne bridge into Newcastle, through Newcastle city centre, past St James's Park, and all the way round through Newcastle, and then back down the coast road to the lighthouse to hopefully meet up with a couple of others at lunch. Now while we're riding, I thought I'd talk about riding with other people and riding alone. I think the majority of the time I like to ride by myself so that I can just get lost and let the bike take me where I want to go, and I don't have to have responsibility for anybody else or making sure that I'm not losing anybody else or that I'm not getting lost myself. But sometimes it is really nice to have some company. Something which I really like, especially with meeting up with other bikers who have similar likes and somebody to talk about bikes with. And it's nice to just, when you take a stop, to be able to just sit and talk and have that camaraderie that you don't have when you turn up somewhere by yourself, when you're riding alone. Now my issues with riding with people is that I don't really have anybody in my range. I kind of ride with people from the two separate ends of the spectrum, with me sandwiched in the middle. On one end I've got the likes of the old man that I've mentioned before, I'm not going to mention his name, who rides like a snail, is very anxious, only goes specific routes, and also tells my husband that I'm too fast. On the other hand, I've also got my son, who is also a learner. Riding with him is really good because it's really nice to have some mother and son time. We've always had mother and son time because I've always enjoyed doing what he loves, so I've spent a lot of time going to theatre shows with him and watching musicals, and also taking part in amateur theatre so that we could both do it together because he is an actor. He's also a drag queen. And it's really good to actually have that time with him, so it's really nice that I like his likes and that he also likes my passions as well, like the motorbike. So it's nice that we can go out together. But because he's a learner, he keeps stalling a lot, he can be quite slow, and sometimes I feel like I'm a tutor, I'm back to being a teacher, like being back at school, so it's like being at work. And having to just keep an eye on him and also watch my speed and go slow so that he can keep up with me, although he is faster than the old man I've mentioned before. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we've got like Kevin, who is behind me, and some of the other riders like Katrina that you'll meet later, who have got bigger bikes, who've passed the test. Some have been riding a lot longer than me and are a lot more experienced, and I feel like the slow coach holding them up, and I feel like the inexperienced one when I'm with them. So it'd be nice to find some riders who are kind of in my mid-range, so experienced riders but still not as experienced as others, and also people who are stuck on small bikes like me. I don't think it's fair that everybody has to wait for my little Ronnie who can only do 55. Although I am trying to push her that little bit further to see what I can actually get out of her. But I don't want to push her too hard so that I overrun the engine and end up causing her to break. So I do have to respect her limitations. I did find recently a group called the Curvy Women's Bikers. It's a group that is up in the northeast. I've now joined, I've made a couple of friends, and I'm hoping to actually get out and ride with some other female riders once lockdown is over, which hopefully will be nice. But I do think the majority of my rides will probably be just me and Ronnie, just together, just being able to set my mind free and clear my mind of everything that gets to me during the week. Now we're going along the bottom road, the back of the Tyne tunnel, which also runs along the back of Wallsend and past Sagadunum. It kind of follows the Tyne. We're kind of going to be following the Tyne all the way into Newcastle. It goes down through Walker and then into Biker and then down onto the quayside. It's a lovely little route. I like going down to Newcastle this way rather than going down the coast road because it's nice little roads, mainly 40, which are quite nice with a couple of slightly faster roads, but it's nice just to be able to enjoy the scenery and take a nice leisurely ride along the Tyne. Well, back onto bike test talk, which is a very difficult subject. I'm redoing my CBT again on the 18th of April because restrictions are getting lifted at the end of March, so I have to do my CBT yet again because my current CBT runs out on the 22nd, and because my theory test has been changed for the third time, there's no way that I could get my theory test done and my mod 1 and my mod 2 before the 22nd of April. So I'm redoing my CBT, which will give me some breathing space. I know It basically gives me 2 years of breathing space, but I'm not going down that road again. So I am planning on doing my mods by the summer. Hopefully by August. I'm hoping by September I will have passed my test. I hope. I'm going to look at my CBT as kind of a mock test. I had been due to have a lesson on a bigger bike in January, which obviously got cancelled because of lockdown. So my instructor knows what level I'm at. He knows that I was supposed to have done my mods by now. So hopefully when I do my CBT, he will help a bit. And I'm hoping that maybe I might actually get to have a quick go on one of the bigger bikes, just so I can see whether I'm capable or not, and take it from there. So we'll see what happens on the 18th. Well, we're almost at the quayside, just currently stuck at traffic lights. So we'll be heading back down the quayside. I know I've shown footage of the quayside before, I think. But it's one of them views, one of them places that you never get sick of. It's one of my favourite places of living up here in the northeast. It's really beautiful. The quayside is amazing, and St Mary's Lighthouse is amazing. And I'm hoping over the next lot of vlogs to show you some other really beautiful spots within the northeast. I know for those of you who don't live in the northeast, we do get a bit of a bad rep sometimes, but I do think that shows like Vera, etc. kind of do show off how beautiful it is up here, even though it can be quite cold up north. But I think our scenery and our heritage and everything just makes up for it. It's just absolutely beautiful, and especially on a day like today when the sun is shining, you just can't beat these views. So just coming into view in a second is the famous Tyne Bridge, and just over to the left you can just see the sun shining off it, which looks like a glass slug, is the Sage Music Hall. So we're about to head over the swing bridge, with the Tyne Bridge to the left of us, just above, which is what we're going to go back over, coming back into Newcastle. Now when I was younger, the swing bridge used to be used a lot. It used to swing to let boats through, but I can't remember the last time it ever actually swung. I think it's basically just stuck as it is now. I don't even know if it will actually move now. I think it's been stuck that long. So now we're in Gateshead. Now as we seem to be talking CBTs, my very first CBT in 1997 was in Newcastle on Westgate Road. But the majority of the actual CBT on the road part of the CBT was done in Gateshead using these roads here. Now the systems are very weird roundabouts that go into traffic lights. There are very strange one-way systems, and it's very difficult. It's a lot more difficult route than the CBT that I took my last CBT, which was in North Shields and went round Whitley Bay and to the lighthouse and back. That was quite leisurely. For my very first CBT, I don't know whether it's just the fact that also it was the first time I'd been on a bike myself. That coupled with the fact that these roads can be quite difficult. But I did end up losing my instructor by going the wrong way. He told me to go right and I went left. Ended up losing him in the one-way system. I also ended up dropping the bike while trying to do some U-turns and snapped the clutch lever. But somehow I still managed to pass. I have no idea how I managed to pass after breaking the bike. But I did, and that was my very first CBT. I then went on to do many more. Now, U-turns are one of those things that I know I'm going to have trouble with when I do my mod 1. Mainly because I normally like to have my foot hovering, and occasionally like to put my foot down just to give me that little bit of balance as going round. And apparently you fail if you do that. So just before I was just signalling to Kevin to say what way we are going. So to say we're going straight over and then round to the right, because this road is a very bizarre way that it is formatted. So just about to head over the Tyne Bridge. Now last time I done this, I just continued on this road and continued round, which fed straight onto the coast road. But something I kind of realised later is there was a very small section of this road which just after the Tyne Bridge goes underneath a tunnel and then feeds on to the coast road, is actually an M road. So it's the A167M. With me having L plates, it means that I can't really go on it. The last time I went on, I suppose if I got stopped I could feign that I didn't know. But at this point I did know, so I couldn't really use that excuse. Plus also it's a good excuse to go through town, which is also quite difficult, a lot of one-way streets. I like to challenge myself. And also it's really nice to go past the Centre for Life and to show Kevin the St James's Park, since he is not a Newcastle fan. Which is quite funny, I'm actually married to a Liverpool fan, which can get quite amusing on football matches. We wind each other up. He seems to wind me up a lot more than anything, because Newcastle seem to be constantly doing really badly. But I do get to wind him up at the minute because Liverpool aren't doing very well either, which is quite amusing. Now we're just going round to head along down the one-way system past Central Station. Now as I went round I realised that I am in the wrong lane. I should be in the lane to the right of me, but there's quite a lot of cars alongside me. I was hoping at some point to pull across, but a large HGV type lorry kind of was to the right of me. You can't see it right now, but in a minute you'll see that he does let me in front of him when we get to this road here, and unfortunately Kevin ends up getting stuck behind, so I'm constantly worried that I'm going to lose him. It's one of the reasons why it's sometimes good to ride alone, because I could just go where I want and not have to worry that I'm losing somebody. I do get lost quite a lot. I'll tell you in a bit about a very funny story of me getting lost. So, epic getting lost stories. Maybe share in the comments any of your getting lost stories to see if any of yours are as hilarious as mine. Quite a few years ago, and this was in a car, not a bike, I had a lovely little car called Ladybug. It was red and covered in ladybirds and flowers. It was my little learner car, and I was taking it down to give to my sister-in-law as a present. So I was driving down to Burton-on-Trent in my little ladybug. Now I left an hour before my husband and my kids. They left an hour after me. It's a 3-hour journey, but they got there about 5 hours before me, which was quite hilarious. I ended up going to Burton-on-Trent via Grantham, Nottingham, Leicester, Donington and Derby, and then eventually Burton-on-Trent. Now that would be funny enough to begin with. I had to stop for directions quite a lot of times, and just kept getting lost. But what made it even funnier was I was actually dressed as a ladybird, because earlier that day I'd been raising money for the British Heart Foundation because my son has congenital heart disease. So not only was I lost, I was a ladybird lost, which was regularly asking for directions and getting a lot of laughs off people. But I did make quite a lot of money from that, because every time somebody gave me directions, I made sure they gave me a donation for my trouble. That is probably the worst getting lost story I've done, but I do have a very bad habit of getting lost. So just in front of us is the Centre for Life, which we will be going past in a moment. In a moment we'll be approaching Westgate Road, which is where the test centre was on, that when I'd done my very first CBT back in 1997. It also has a few bike shops. Once upon a time, especially back in my early days of riding, there used to be a lot of bike shops on, and just to the left of us right now with these traffic lights is a car park which has a sign that says on a Saturday and Sunday, bikes have priority. Basically, bikers used to meet a lot at this Westgate Road car park, and it used to be kind of a bit of a bike haven, but it's kind of gone a bit derelict now. I don't think any bikers really come to Westgate Road anymore, and a lot of the bike shops have closed down. And I know the test centre has moved, it's no longer on Westgate Road, which is a shame because it was a lovely place to meet. I might go one Saturday or Sunday just to see if any bikers are still turning up there or not. Now in a moment, once we get through this traffic or these roadworks, we will be approaching St James's Park. So a quick fast forward through some of the roadworks and traffic, and just ahead of us is St James's Park, and we're going to go around the side of it, keeping it to our right, so you can get a good view of it there. Now a lot of these buildings to the left have sprung up in the past few years. They look really nice. I think Newcastle's starting to really look like a nice place. A lot of the old derelict buildings have come down and it's starting to look very nice. So just riding up and round the back of Newcastle and heading back towards the coast road. I'm going to cut out quite a lot of this next bit so that it saves on time, so that you're not watching the entire journey. Now this next little stretch I've decided to put in is just around the back end of Jesmond. It's a very strange double roundabout, which has always scared me. I had to do it in my car test, which is quite scary. You've got two roundabouts that are practically on top of each other, so it's not just a case of watching the first roundabout, it's also the second as well. But I think sometimes you can get a bit over panicky on thinking about both, where it's sometimes best just to look at each one separately. As soon as you get round the first one, then think about the second one. But especially for learner drivers and learner riders, it can be very scary. They have lengthened the stretch in between the two roundabouts since I'd done my car test. They were a lot closer to each other than what they are now. But it's still scary. Although it didn't look scary, you probably don't think it looks scary from where you're watching. If you're from the northeast, maybe put in the comments any difficult roads or areas around where you live that are a bit of a nuisance or a bit tricky, a bit difficult, or ones that you were, when you were a learner or a newbie, were afraid to try. I always want to know about these and actually start conversations with people. While heading back onto the coast road, which is a straight road all the way back down to Tynemouth. Now this stretch of the coast road is a 50-mile-an-hour limit, and I keep looking down just to make sure that I'm within the speed limit, because there is a speed camera just that we're just passing now, which sometimes catches a lot of people out. Now just about to leave the 50-mile-an-hour zone as we go under this bridge. It then soon turns into a 70-mile-an-hour limit, although lately stretches of it have been remaining 50 while we've been doing roadworks. Now you can see a bike just going zooming past me. Another one is just soon to follow. On one hand, I'm massively jealous because I would love to go that fast. But as you see, we've just hit another 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. I was doing 53 at that point, so I guess the two bikes were speeding, but I guess that's their own prerogative. They can do what they want. I try not to speed, but then again, my bike doesn't exactly let me speed, really. Ooh, 54. I really should slow down a little bit. God help me if I actually get a faster bike. We're going into a 30 now for some of the roadwork. Well, fast forward quite a bit and we are back at the lighthouse, ready to have a stop and a coffee. It's my turn to buy the coffee and maybe some food, and meet up with some other bikers and see if anybody else is joining us for a little ride after our break. Now it's midweek, so there's not as many bikers as there is on a Saturday and Sunday, but there is a couple here. It's always the same people. I think it's really nice that there's a nice little lighthouse biker community who regularly come down to the lighthouse to ride down and to chat. They're a nice bunch. Well, getting ready to set off, Katrina decided to come and join us for the next part of our journey. We are going to head down to North Shields Fish Quay. So going back along the coast, which you've seen before, and down onto the Fish Quay. At this point, Katrina's going to lead, I'm going to be in the middle, and Kevin's going to be behind. So basically I'm going to be the meat and the sandwich of these two beautiful big bikes. And Katrina is already zooming ahead of me, which is quite typical. She has got a much more beautiful, bigger bike than me. I'm so jealous. Now I'm not going to show all of the seafront because you've seen it a few times and you're going to get a bit bored. So once we get to the junction of leaving St Mary's Lighthouse, I'm just going to cut to when we reach Tynemouth and then show some of the footage down to the Fish Quay, and then that's where we're going to be leaving Katrina, and then seeing a little bit of the journey back to the Silverlink to say goodbye to Kevin. Well, we're just leaving Tynemouth village and heading along the road towards North Shields. I'm going to head down the bank in a little bit down to North Shields Fish Quay. Now Katrina's left her left indicator on. It's good to know that experienced riders also forget about their indicators every now and again. This is something that I normally do. I'm just going to give her a signal to say that she's left her indicator on, just to let her know so that she can turn it off. Now the sun is quite bright in the sky. It's only about 10 past 2-ish, yet the sun seems quite low. But it's been such a beautiful day. Now the bank that we're going to be going down, I'm not too bad going down it, but I'm a bit worried going up steep hills. I never liked doing it in a car. I think I'm a little bit more comfortable where hill starts on a bike because I've also got my feet as well as the handlebar brake and the foot brake. But I don't like hills very much. I'm not scared of anything really, but hills can sometimes scare me a little bit. Now I know really I shouldn't be going on this hashed part of the road, but on a bike it is much easier to go onto that part than to stick to the actual lane, and you would have seen Katrina do the same. A lot of bikers do what I've just done because of the slant of the way that the road turns into the hill. If you actually go onto the lane itself, it's very much a risk of toppling over. It's something that always scares me on those sort of roads where it bends round straight onto a hill. There's another couple of roads like that in Gateshead, which are quite scary, and I've just got visions of leaning into a turn onto a road and coming off. At North Shields Fish Quay. I'm just going to pull up next to Katrina's bike so that you can get a good look at her bike. Well, we stop and have a little bit of a chat for about half an hour, a toilet stop, and just some general chit chat and talk about bikes and about the day before getting ready to set off again. And then Katrina had to leave a bit before us, had to go off to do a fuel stop, and me and Kevin continued the next part of the journey, heading back to the Silverlink to say goodbye. I'm sure I've mentioned before that I'm a marine biologist. I studied marine biology at Scarborough. At one point I did work down here on the Fish Quay as a fisheries scientist. I worked for DEFRA, the Department for Environment, Fisheries and Rural Affairs, before the Marine Management Organisation was created. I'm currently a committee member for the Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority. I also work as a teacher, providing cover for teachers who are off sick through an agency. I've done a lot of teaching, mainly environmental education, teaching in outdoor environmental education in the past. I've done a lot of work with youth clubs and those at risk of offending. I've done a lot of youth work. I'm a street pastor and a response pastor. I'm a church deacon and I'm in charge of all the tech. I'm a very techie person. basically, there's a lot I do. But I'm also an author. I've mentioned this before, so maybe check out my books. I've written the Wildflower series, and I write under the pen name Alexia Lockhart. Now we're just about to go up the hill on the far side of the fish quay, which is not as steep as the hill that we went down. And typically when we get to the top, there are traffic lights, and the traffic lights are on red, which means the hill start, but as I said earlier, I'm a lot better at hill starts on a bike, and I'm starting to get really comfortable with doing hill starts. We're just passing the Royal Quays and heading back to the Silver Link, where I will be saying goodbye to Kevin. Well, for the camera, what did you think of the ride?
I enjoyed it. That was good. So different.
Well, I think it's time for me to sign off as well, as I wave goodbye to Kevin. I hope that you join me next time for my next vlog, and if you could subscribe to my channel and like, and most of all, leave comments. I really like to actually talk to people and see whether people are actually watching my vlogs.